Hello, I'm Mark Arnold from Urban Saints to share some thoughts with you about to inclusion and beyond. Did you know that in Scotland 25% of school pupils in 2016 had additional support needs of some kind, of which 60% were boys? The figures are similar in England, where 1 in 5 children have a special educational need or disability, ranging from dyslexia to a physical impairment. Those with additional support needs and their families can find life isolating and lonely, with children, siblings and parents often feeling excluded from a wide range of social activities, including church. So let's think for a moment about what church is like. For a 7-year-old with autism, for example, who finds that loud, crowded rooms full of bright lights and a range of different smells like coffee and perfume overload their senses and cause them to collapse into a meltdown. Or what's it like for an 11-year-old with dyslexia who finds that those beautiful photos that are on the backdrop to the words on the screen mean that the words swirl before their eyes? Or what's it like for a 15-year-old who uses a wheelchair when the worship leader says, "Let's stand to worship"? As everyone is now stood in front of them, they now can't see the words to the worship song anyway. And as they can't stand, does that mean they can't worship? It's easy to see how people with experiences like this may feel that church is just simply not for them. There are 3 steps that a church can take to make a real difference in this area. The first one is inclusion. Churches are beginning to take note and in many cases are seeking ways to include children and young people such as those we've just looked at. Quiet spaces are being created with resources that 7-year-old can use to access the service. And the family is encouraged to come in once the rest of the congregation has settled down so that it's a bit more peaceful. A screen with plain backgrounds has been set up for the 11-year-old with dyslexia and others to be able to access. And the 15-year-old has been given a choice of places to go that all have line of sight to the screen, and phrases spoken are changed to include "if you are able." In beginning this process, many have found that the best first step to enable inclusion to become a reality rather than an aspiration is to appoint someone to own inclusion. Because if nobody owns it, it's nobody's responsibility to ensure that it happens, and it can end up remaining something to do another day. Such an inclusion champion doesn't necessarily need to have an extensive education, health or social care background, although some of these things can sometimes help. But what they need most is a heart to help and support the children, young people and families with additional support needs, and the willingness to try to enable the whole congregation to see what happens in church through their eyes. Inclusion provides the practical changes necessary for someone to be physically present, to have a space at the table, maybe even to have someone to help them. However, if we just leave things there, we're doing little more than child minding. There is so much more that we can do. Which brings us on to our second step, belonging. Belonging is when someone feels that they aren't just there because someone has ticked a few boxes, ramp, tick, toilet, tick, helper, tick, but they are there because they are wanted. They feel they can contribute something and that their contribution is really valued. Belonging happens when a church looks beyond the disability and sees the person. Sees the personality, the skills and gifts and talents rather than the additional support needs. Belonging happens when the child or young person and their family really feel at home in their church. This is a congregational journey to be spearheaded by the leadership, but needing everyone to participate. How are those with additional support needs given opportunities to serve? How are the gifts, skills and talents of those with additional support needs recognised? When are the views and opinions of those with disability or their families sought? Belonging is all about building a relationship, an affinity with that person so that they feel secure and accepted for who they are. When that point is reached, the next stage of the journey, spiritual development, then becomes a natural progression. So as we look at spiritual development, we consider if a child or young person with additional support needs truly belongs to the church family. Because if they do, they then naturally, and we naturally, want the very best for them. We want to help take them on steps of faith, to grow in their understanding of God, and to be discipled just as we would anyone else. This will probably look different for each individual, but it should be our fundamental aim to grow and develop everyone's faith and equip them to pass it on to others. Jesus himself showed us that the person and their salvation is more important than their disability. The paralysed man lowered through the roof by his friends was forgiven for his sins first and healed of his physical disability second. Look it up in Luke chapter 5. In the parable of the great banquet, Jesus shows us that all are invited and welcome at the feast of heaven in Luke 14. And in the Great Commission, Jesus shows us that we are all to take the good news to everyone, everywhere. There should be no exceptions. Look at Mark 16 for that. The 3 steps we've looked at together should be steps we take with everyone that we reach out to, regardless of their disability or additional support needs or not, including children and young people with additional support needs, making what we do accessible, helping them to feel that they really belong and valued for who they are and what they can contribute, and taking care to help them to grow and develop spiritually is so important. Will you help take these steps in your church? Here are some further things that you might consider. Think and explore in the Bible about the times that Jesus connected with people with disabilities. How did he treat them? How did he expect others to treat them? Think about how these encounters can teach us to think differently about disability. How can you look beyond the disability or additional support needs to see the person? And how will you help them to truly belong? How can you help develop and grow the faith of children and young people with additional support needs in your church and community, releasing and using their God-given gifts and skills and talents, releasing those into the church? There'll be a reading list in the article, but particularly look for John Gillibrand's Disabled Church and Disabled Society. It's a great starting point. And here's some things you can do to act. Speak to those in your congregation who you know have additional support needs. What are their experiences of church, and what does that tell you? Consider appointing an inclusion champion in your church. Access some further training to help you get started. Urban Saints provide a training program called All Inclusive. Other training options are also available. Connect with others who are on the same journey as you. A vibrant learning community called the Additional Needs Alliance is out there. You can find that at additionalneedsalliance.org.uk or find it on Facebook. It includes parents, children's workers, youth workers, people representing organisations of all kinds who are passionate about this ministry area. Some of them may be near you. And have a look at the additional needs pages of the Urban Saints website. You can check that out at urbansaints.org/additional needs. I hope that this short video has been helpful for you. If you'd like to get in touch and follow up anything that we've explored and looked at in this session, do contact me, marnold@urbansaints.org. Follow me on Twitter, Mark_J_Arnold, or have a look at my blogs, which you'll find at the Additional Needs blogfather.wordpress.com. Thank you.